The alien princess fell for the human soldier the moment he entered the grand hall. The boots hit the marble floor with a sound that echoed through the grand hall like thunder. Every alien dignitary turned to watch as Captain Jake Morrison walked through the towering entrance, his combat armor still scarred from the battle that had ended just 3 hours ago. He wasn't supposed to be here. Protocol demanded a diplomatic envoy, someone polished and proper, but the Zephyranian Empire had requested him specifically, and when an empire that controlled 40-star systems made a request, Earth listened. Princess Lyra stood on the elevated platform, her crystalline skin catching the light from a dozen suns that filtered through the hall's transparent ceiling. She had presided over countless ceremonies, met warriors from 100 worlds, and never once felt her twin hearts skip their rhythm. Until now. The human moved differently than other species. No careful gliding, no respectful shuffle. He walked like he owned the space between him and his destination. His eyes, startlingly blue against his tanned skin, swept the hall with tactical precision before settling on her. For a moment that stretched into eternity, their gazes locked. Jake had been briefed about Princess Lyra, daughter of Emperor Thawne, commander of the Stellar Guard, holder of 7 military honors, and next in line for the Crystal Throne. What the briefing hadn't mentioned was how she would look at him like he was the only person in a room filled with thousands. Her eyes, shifting through colors he had no names for, widened slightly. He saw her hand move to her chest, and even from this distance he noticed the change in her breathing. The hall fell silent. This meeting was supposed to be a formality. Earth had helped repel an invasion force from the Kronar horde, and the Zephyranian Empire wanted to thank humanity publicly. But something unspoken passed between the soldier and the princess, something that made the assembled crowd shift uncomfortably. Jake climbed the steps to the platform. Protocol required him to kneel, to lower his eyes, to speak only when spoken to. He did none of these things. He stopped 3 feet from Lyra and stood at attention, meeting her gaze directly. "Captain Morrison," she said, and her voice carried a melodic quality that made his name sound like music. "We are told you led the defense of Station Outpost 7. I did what needed doing, Your Highness. You held a position against 5,000 Kronar warriors with only 200 soldiers, for 6 days. 5 days and 19 hours, ma'am. But who's counting?" A ripple of shock ran through the crowd. No one spoke to Princess Lyra with such casual irreverence. The royal guards tensed, hands moving toward weapons. But Lyra raised one elegant hand and they froze. "You lost 37 soldiers," she continued, and now her voice carried something else. Admiration. Respect. Something deeper. 37 heroes, Jake corrected. Each one bought time for the evacuation ships. Each one saved thousands of lives. Lyra descended from her throne, moving with fluid grace. She stopped directly in front of him, close enough that he could see the subtle patterns that flowed beneath her crystalline skin like living art. Up close, she was even more striking. Tall, nearly matching his 6 feet, with features that seemed both alien and somehow familiar. "The Empire owes humanity a debt," she said formally, but her eyes told a different story. They traced the scar on his jaw, the tired lines around his eyes, the set of his shoulders that spoke of burdens carried without complaint. "Humanity doesn't want a debt, Your Highness. We want an alliance. A real one. Not the political kind where everyone smiles and nothing changes. And what kind would that be? The kind where when the next threat comes, and there's always a next threat, we stand together. No politics. No calculations. Just warriors watching each other's backs." Lyra's hand moved, and for a moment Jake thought she might touch his face. Instead, she removed one of her ceremonial rings, a band of compressed star metal that glowed within her light. This belonged to General Cross, who held the Northern Pass for 30 days against impossible odds, 400 years ago. It has been passed to warriors who understand that some things are worth more than survival. She held it out to him. Jake understood the significance. This wasn't just a medal or a token. This was acceptance into a warrior tradition that stretched back millennia. He took the ring, feeling its unexpected warmth, and slipped it onto his finger. "Thank you, Your Highness. Call me Lyra," she said quietly, and the crowd gasped. The human soldier looked at the alien princess, and something fundamental shifted in the political landscape of 3-star systems. Neither of them knew it yet, but this moment would change everything. Jake Morrison had faced down enemy hordes, survived impossible odds, and led men through hell. But standing in front of Princess Lyra, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years of combat. He felt seen, understood, and utterly unprepared for whatever came next. The ceremony continued, but neither of them paid attention to the speeches or the formalities. They stood together on that platform, and the universe seemed to rearrange itself around them, making room for something new, something unprecedented, something that would either unite two civilizations or tear them apart. The Grand Hall had witnessed countless historic moments, but none quite like this. A human soldier and an alien princess, drawn together by something that transcended species, politics, and protocol. The story was just beginning, and already it was clear that nothing would ever be the same. The reception after the ceremony was held in the Crystal Gardens, a vast space where plants from 1,000 worlds grew in carefully maintained ecosystems. Jake found himself surrounded by diplomats and nobles, all eager to speak with the human who had caught their princess's attention. He answered their questions with military precision, never revealing more than necessary, always watching for threats. Across the garden, Lyra was trapped in similar conversations, but her eyes kept finding him. Every time their gazes met, something electric passed between them, the other nobles noticed. Whispers spread like wildfire through the crowd. "It's unprecedented," said Ambassador Krell, a reptilian diplomat from the outer reaches. "Princess Lyra has never shown interest in anyone, human or otherwise." "Maybe she just respects a good soldier," Jake replied, sipping the strange beverage he'd been given. It tasted like starlight and honey. "Respect? Captain Morrison, I've served in the Zephyrian court for 20 years. That was not respect. That was something far more complicated." Before Jake could respond, a commotion erupted near the garden's entrance. 3 figures pushed through the crowd, moving with military purpose. They wore the crimson armor of the Imperial Elite, the Emperor's personal guard. The tallest one, a warrior with silver markings across his crystalline face, headed straight for Jake. "Captain Morrison," the warrior said, his voice carrying barely controlled anger, "I am Commander Vex, the princess's betrothed." Jake's expression didn't change, but his body shifted slightly, weight balanced, ready for anything. The briefing didn't mention a betrothed. It's a recent arrangement, political necessity. The union of our house with the Northern Territories will secure peace for generations. Vex moved closer, using his height advantage to loom over Jake. "I watched your little display in the Grand Hall. Very touching. But understand something, human. Lyra is spoken for. Whatever you think happened up there, forget it. With respect, Commander, shouldn't the princess decide who she's interested in? You know nothing of our culture, our traditions. Lyra has responsibilities that transcend personal feelings. She knows this." She's always known this. Jake met Vex's gaze without flinching. Funny thing about responsibilities. Sometimes they're just chains that people are too afraid to break. Vex's hand moved to his weapon, but a voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Commander Vex, are you threatening my guest?" Lyra stood 10 feet away, and the temperature seemed to drop. She was still wearing her ceremonial robes, but now she radiated authority that had nothing to do with clothing. This was the woman who commanded the Stellar Guard, who had won battles before most warriors learned to hold a weapon. "Your Highness, I was merely introducing myself to Captain Morrison. By threatening him in my gardens? How diplomatic." Lyra moved between them, facing Vex. "We need to talk privately." "About what?" "Our wedding is in 3 months. Everything is arranged. About the fact that everything changed today." Her voice was calm, but underneath, Jake heard steel. "I'm not marrying you, Vex." The gardens fell silent. Every conversation stopped. Every eye turned to watch the princess publicly reject her betrothed. Vex's face went through several colors before settling on deep purple, which Jake's briefing had mentioned indicated rage in Zephyrians. "You would throw away an alliance that took years to negotiate? For what? A human you met 3 hours ago?" "I would throw away an alliance built on selling myself like property. I've honored my father's wishes my entire life. I fought his wars, won his battles, and sacrificed everything for the Empire. But this I won't do. Your father will never allow it. My father will understand that some things cannot be commanded." Lyra turned to Jake. "Walk with me, Captain." It wasn't a request. Jake followed her deeper into the gardens, aware of hundreds of eyes tracking their movement. Behind them, Vex stood frozen, his carefully constructed future crumbling around him. They walked in silence until the noise of the reception faded. Lyra led him to a secluded grove where trees with silver bark grew around a pool of luminescent water. The light painted her skin in shades of blue and violet. "I apologize for the drama," she said. "That wasn't how I wanted this conversation to go. You just canceled a wedding because of me. I think we're past worrying about drama." Lyra laughed, and the sound was like crystal bells. "When you walked into the Grand Hall, something happened. I felt it the moment our eyes met. It was like recognizing someone I've known forever. even though we'd never met. I felt it too. Jake moved closer to the pool's edge. But your guy wasn't wrong. We met 3 hours ago. This is crazy. Crazy would be ignoring it. I've spent 30 years preparing to lead my people. Training, fighting, making every decision based on logic and duty. But when you looked at me, I remembered something I'd forgotten. That I'm more than just a princess or a commander. I'm someone who deserves to make her own choices. Your father's not going to be happy. My father respects strength. And you, Captain Morrison, represent something he's been trying to understand since humanity entered the galactic stage. You represent a species that refuses to be intimidated, that fights impossible odds and wins, that somehow maintains hope in the darkness. He'll understand eventually. And if he doesn't? Lyra turned to face him fully. Then I'll deal with that too. But I want you to understand something. I'm not some naive girl swept away by romance. I'm a warrior who recognizes another warrior. Someone who understands sacrifice and duty but refuses to let them define everything. I want to know you, Jake Morrison. I want to understand what makes humans so impossibly stubborn and brave. And yes, I want to explore whatever this is between us. Jake studied her face, seeing the determination there, the strength, and yes, the vulnerability. Your world and mine are very different, which is exactly why this matters. The galaxy needs bridges between cultures, between species. Maybe we're that bridge. Before Jake could respond, an explosion rocked the gardens. The peaceful evening shattered as alarms blared throughout the palace complex. Aces kicked in immediately. He grabbed Lyra's arm and pulled her behind a cluster of silver trees. Stay down. What's happening? Attack? Professional? They timed it for when everyone's attention was distracted. Jake's eyes scanned the area, cataloging exits and threats. We need to get you somewhere secure. This is my palace. I'm not hiding. Lyra's hand moved to her side, and suddenly she held a weapon that hummed with barely contained energy. Where I come from, princesses fight. Another explosion. Closer this time. Jake saw figures moving through the gardens, combat armor painted in active camouflage. They moved with military precision, heading straight for their location. Kronar, Lyra breathed. But how? We destroyed their fleet. They're making a statement, showing they can reach anyone, anywhere. Jake pulled his sidearm, checking the charge. How many guards nearby? Most were at the main reception. We're isolated here. Perfect. Jake's smile was cold. Let's show them what happens when you corner a human and a Zephyrian warrior. The attackers emerged from 3 directions, 6 heavily armed Kronar warriors, their insectoid features hidden behind combat helmets. They clearly expected an easy target, a princess caught without protection. They were wrong. Jake moved first, dropping one attacker with a precise shot to the helmet's weak point. Lyra was right beside him, her weapon cutting through armor with focused energy beams. They moved like they'd trained together for years, each covering the other's blind spots, creating a defensive perimeter that turned the grove into a killing field. A Kronar warrior broke through, massive and fast. Jake's weapon ran dry. The creature's blade swung at his head. Lyra's hand shot out, grabbing the blade with her bare hand. Her crystalline skin absorbed the impact, and with a twist, she disarmed the warrior and drove his own weapon through his armor. "Behind you!" Jake shouted. Lyra spun, but not fast enough. The attacker's weapon fired, and she took the blast to her shoulder. She staggered, and Jake was there, supporting her weight while taking down the shooter with his backup weapon. The remaining Kronar retreated, clearly not expecting this level of resistance. Within minutes, palace guards flooded the area, too late to help, but in time to secure the perimeter. Jake helped Lyra sit against the tree. Burned. Her shoulder was badly burned, the crystalline structure cracked and bleeding a luminescent fluid. You need medical attention. I've had worse. She looked at him with new understanding. You didn't hesitate. Most warriors would have protected themselves first. Most warriors aren't standing next to someone worth protecting. The palace medical team arrived, but Lyra refused to leave until she'd given orders to lock down the entire complex and begin investigations. Jake watched her work, impressed by how she maintained command even while injured. This wasn't just a princess playing at being a soldier. This was the real thing. Later, in the medical wing, Jake sat outside Lyra's room while healers worked on her shoulder. Ambassador Krell found him there. You saved her life, the ambassador said. She saved mine too. We made a good team. The Emperor wants to see you. Now. Jake stood, straightening his uniform. Figured he might. The throne room was less impressive than the Grand Hall, but far more intimidating. Emperor Thon sat on a throne of compressed diamond, his massive form radiating power. He was old by Zephyrian standards, his crystalline skin showing the deep colors of age, but his eyes were sharp and calculating. "Captain Morrison, you've had quite an evening." "Your Majesty." Jake stood at attention but didn't bow. Humans didn't bow to anyone anymore, and the galaxy had learned to accept that. "My daughter publicly rejected her betrothed. Then she nearly died in an attack that should have been impossible. And through it all, you were at her side." Thon leaned forward. "Explain to me why I shouldn't have you shipped back to Earth immediately. Because your daughter is her own person, and she deserves to make her own choices. Because the attack proves your security has been compromised, and you need someone you can trust near her. And because whether you like it or not, something real happened between us today, and ignoring it won't make it go away." The Emperor stared at him for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he laughed. "You humans are impossibly arrogant. It's refreshing. Everyone else spends so much time being diplomatic that they forget to be honest." His expression grew serious. "Lyra is my youngest daughter and my greatest joy. She's also the finest warrior I've ever commanded. If she thinks you're worth the political chaos you've created, then I'll trust her judgment. But understand this, Captain. You hurt her, you disappoint her, you give me any reason to doubt you, and I'll personally escort you to the nearest airlock." "Fair enough, Your Majesty. Now get out of here and go check on my daughter. She's been asking for you." Jake found Lyra in her quarters, shoulder bandaged but eyes alert. She smiled when he entered. "My father didn't have you executed. Good sign. He threatened me with an airlock, but I think we understand each other." Lyra patted the seat beside her. "Sit. We need to talk about what happens next." "What do you want to happen?" "I want you to stay, not just for tonight, but longer. I want time to explore this connection. I want to show you my world, my culture. I want to understand yours. And I want to do it without the weight of duty crushing us both. Your people won't like it. My people will have questions. And we've got enemies who clearly want you dead. So it won't be easy. When is anything worthwhile ever easy?" Jake took her hand, careful of her injury. Her skin was warm despite its crystalline appearance. "I've fought in a dozen battles, survived situations that should have killed me, and led soldiers through impossible odds. But this scares me more than any of that." "Good. If it didn't scare you, it wouldn't be real." Lyra squeezed his hand. "I'm scared too, but I'm also more certain of this than I've been of anything in years." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars through the massive windows. Somewhere out there, forces were already moving to exploit or destroy what was beginning between them. Political alliances would shift. Enemies would plot, the comfortable order of things would be challenged, but in that moment, none of it mattered. A human soldier and an alien princess had found something unexpected in each other. The galaxy would have to adjust. The days following the attack moved with brutal efficiency. Jake found himself swept into the machinery of imperial politics whether he liked it or not. Security briefings, diplomatic meetings, and endless questions about Earth's military capabilities filled his hours. But every evening, he found time to see Lyra. She healed quickly, the Zephyrian medical technology far beyond anything Earth possessed. Within 3 days, only a faint discoloration on her shoulder showed where the energy blast had nearly killed her. They spent their evenings walking the palace grounds, learning about each other in stolen moments between their responsibilities. "Tell me about Earth," Lyra said one evening as they stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city. "Not the military briefings or the diplomatic summaries. Tell me what it's really like." Jake leaned against the railing, memories flooding back. "It's messy, beautiful and terrible at the same time. We've got oceans that stretch forever and mountains that touch the clouds. But we've also got poverty, war, and a million problems we're still trying to solve. Humanity's strength isn't that we're perfect. It's that we keep fighting even when we're not. Your species fascinates me. You've only had interstellar capability for 50 years, but you've already made yourselves impossible to ignore. Other species took centuries to reach your level of influence. Maybe it's because we're too stubborn to know when we're outmatched. Or maybe it's because we've spent our entire history fighting each other, and when we finally found something else to fight, we were really good at it." Lyra moved closer, her shoulder brushing his. "I've commanded warriors from a dozen species. But humans are different. You don't just fight to win. You fight like the outcome matters personally. Like every battle is about protecting something you love. Isn't that how everyone fights?" "No. Most species fight for territory, resources, or political gain. Humans fight for ideas. For each other." I watched the recordings of Outpost 7. Your soldiers weren't defending strategic positions. They were buying time for evacuation ships full of people they'd never met. That's not normal military thinking. It's the only way we know how to be. A sound behind them made Jake turn, hand instinctively moving to his weapon. But it was only Chancellor Morin, Lyra's chief advisor, and one of the few people allowed unrestricted access to the princess. Your Highness, Captain Morrison, the Emperor requests your presence in the strategy room immediately. They found the strategy room filled with military commanders and intelligence officers. A holographic display dominated the center, showing star charts and tactical information. Emperor Thawne stood at the head of the table, his expression grim. The Kronar attack wasn't random, he began without preamble. Intelligence has confirmed it was a coordinated strike authorized by their high command. But they weren't trying to kill Lyra. They were testing our defenses. Testing for what? Lyra asked, moving to study the display. A full invasion. We've detected fleet movements along the border. 3 battle groups, maybe more. They're preparing for something big. Jake studied the hologram, his tactical mind automatically analyzing the Kronar positions. They're spreading out, trying to make you defend everywhere at once. Classic attrition strategy. They wear down your forces while building up for a decisive strike. Exactly, confirmed Admiral Kor, a grizzled veteran who commanded the Stellar Guard. But we don't know where the main strike will come. Yes, we do, Jake said, pointing to a system on the edge of Zephyrian space. Thresna system. It's the only place that makes strategic sense. Control Thresna, and you control access to 3 major trade routes and cut the Empire in half. The room went quiet as the assembled commanders studied the system. Finally, Admiral Kor nodded. The human is right. Thresna is the key. Then we fortify Thresna, Lyra said. Pull forces from secondary systems, establish a defensive perimeter they can't break, and leave the rest of the Empire vulnerable? Thawne shook his head. We don't have enough ships to properly defend everywhere. Then don't defend everywhere. Jake moved closer to the hologram, expanding the view. You're thinking like you're fighting alone. But you're not. Earth has ships in this sector. So does the Galvan Consortium and the Free Colonies. This isn't just a Zephyrian problem. If the Kroners succeed here, they'll be emboldened to attack everyone else. You're suggesting a coalition? Chancellor Morin looks skeptical. The logistics alone would be a nightmare. Different command structures, different technologies, different languages. So make it simple. Each species defends what they're best at defending. Humans are good at holding fixed positions. Give us Thresna and we'll turn it into a fortress. Use your mobile forces for rapid response. Get the Galvans to handle supply lines. Everyone does what they do best, and we coordinate through a joint command structure. And who commands this joint force? Admiral Kor asked. Every eye in the room turned to Lyra. She stood straighter, understanding the weight of what was being offered. Princess Lyra has commanded successful campaigns against 3 different enemies, Thawne said. She understands both our military and humanities, and she has the respect of warriors across multiple species. If we're building a coalition, she's the obvious choice. Father, I'm honored, but no buts. This is what you've trained for your entire life. The galaxy's changing, daughter. Old ways of thinking aren't enough anymore. We need leaders who can bridge cultures and unite different peoples toward common goals. You've already started doing that. He glanced at Jake. In more ways than one. Lyra looked at Jake, and he saw the question in her eyes. He gave a slight nod. She turned back to her father. I accept the command, but I need Captain Morrison as my strategic advisor. Absolutely not, Admiral Kor objected. No offense to the captain, but he's a junior officer from a species that's barely been in space for half a century. This requires someone with experience. Experience didn't predict where the Kronar would strike, Lyra countered. Captain Morrison saw it in 30 seconds, and his defensive Outpost 7 showed tactical brilliance that saved thousands of lives. I need people who think differently, who see problems from new angles. He stays. Jake appreciated her confidence but knew his limits. Your Highness, the Admiral has a point. I'm good at small unit tactics, but commanding a coalition fleet is way above my pay grade. I'm not asking you to command, I'm asking you to think, to question, to challenge assumptions. The traditional commanders will handle the execution. You'll help me see what they miss. Thawne nodded slowly. Agreed. Captain Morrison will serve as special advisor to the coalition command. Admiral Kor, you'll handle fleet operations. Princess Lyra will have overall strategic authority. We'll send envoys to Earth, the Galvan Consortium, and the Free Colonies immediately. The meeting continued for another 2 hours, working through details of ship deployments, supply chains, and communication protocols. By the time they finished, Jake's head was spinning with information about fleet compositions and jump point coordinates. He found himself alone with Lyra in a side corridor afterward. She leaned against the wall, exhaustion showing in the dimming of her crystalline skin. "Are you ready for this?" he asked. "No. But I don't think anyone ever really is." She looked at him with an intensity that made his breath catch. "I meant what I said in there. I need you with me, not just as an advisor. As someone who reminds me that there's more to life than duty and warfare. That's a lot of pressure. You saved my life. You challenged my father to his face. You helped me break free from a marriage I didn't want. I think you can handle a little pressure." She pushed off from the wall and took his hand. "Walk me back to my quarters?" They moved through the palace corridors in comfortable silence. Jake was aware of the guards shadowing them, the servants who bowed as they passed, the weight of history in every stone. This place had stood for 1,000 years, and now he was part of its story. The thought was both humbling and terrifying. At Lyra's door, she hesitated. "Come in, just for a moment." Her quarters were surprisingly simple for a princess. Yes, there were luxuries beyond anything Earth could produce, but the space felt personal, lived in. Weapons hung on one wall, carefully maintained and clearly used. Books filled shelves, their alien script flowing in patterns that looked like art. A balcony opened to the night sky, where 3 moons painted everything in shades of silver. "This is who I am," Lyra said, gesturing to the room. "A soldier who reads poetry. A princess who'd rather train with a blade than attend court functions. Someone caught between duty and desire, trying to figure out where one ends and the other begins." Jake moved to the weapon wall, studying a curved blade that hummed with contained energy. "You don't have to explain yourself to me. I want to. Because what's happening between us, it's real, but it's also complicated by everything else. The war, the politics, our species, our positions. I need you to understand that I'm not just some princess you saved. I'm a warrior with responsibilities that won't disappear because we have feelings for each other." "I know that." He turned to face her. "And I'm not some hero from a story. I'm a soldier who's good at his job, but carries scars from every battle. I've lost people, made mistakes that cost lives, and there are nights when I wake up seeing faces of soldiers I couldn't save. You deserve to know that too." Lyra closed the distance between them. "We're both damaged then, both carrying burdens. Maybe that's why this works. We understand the weight. Or maybe it's just that when you looked at me in the Grand Hall, I saw something I'd stopped believing existed. Someone who could see past the uniform and the reputation to whatever's underneath. And what did you see when you looked at me? Someone who'd been strong for so long that she'd forgotten she was allowed to be vulnerable. Someone brilliant and capable who deserved to make her own choices. Someone worth fighting for." Lyra's hand came up to touch his face, her fingers surprisingly warm. "This is dangerous, what we're starting. It could complicate everything. Everything's already complicated. Might as well have something good in the middle of all the chaos." She smiled, and it transformed her face from merely beautiful to something that made his heart skip. "My father likes you. That's rare. He usually hates everyone I'm interested in. You've been interested in others?" "A few. Political arrangements mostly. People who saw the title before they saw me. But you looked at me like I was just Lyra. No princess, no commander. Just a person you recognized. That's all I'll ever see. The crown and the rank are impressive, but they're not you." "Kiss me," she said suddenly, "before I overthink this and remember all the reasons it's a bad idea." Jake hesitated for only a moment before leaning in. Her lips were soft despite their crystalline appearance, and the kiss was electric. It wasn't desperate or rushed, but deliberate, a promise of something building between them. When they pulled apart, Lyra was glowing slightly, bioluminescence rippling across her skin. "That happens when we feel strong emotions," she explained, slightly embarrassed. "I can't hide what I'm feeling." "Good. I don't want you to hide anything." A chime at the door interrupted them. One of Lyra's guards entered after she called permission. "Your Highness, we've received word from Earth. Their ambassador is requesting to speak with Captain Morrison immediately." Jake sighed. "Duty calls. Always does." Lyra walked him to the door. "Be careful what you tell them. Earth's government will have their own agenda." "I know. But I also know where my loyalties lie now." "With me?" "With what's right. Which, as it happens, includes keeping you safe and stopping a war." He left before she could respond, but he felt her eyes on him as he walked down the corridor. Everything was changing too fast, but for once, he didn't mind the chaos. Something good was growing in the darkness, and he'd protect it with everything he had. The transmission from Earth was waiting in a secure communication room. Ambassador Sarah Martinez appeared in holographic form, her expression carefully neutral. Jake knew her by reputation, a career diplomat who'd negotiated 3 major treaties before the age of 40. Captain Morrison, you've been making quite an impression. Just doing my job, Ambassador. Your job was to receive a medal and return home. Instead, you're advising an alien princess, disrupting political alliances, and apparently starting a romantic relationship that has half the galaxy talking. That's somewhat beyond your mission parameters. The situation evolved. I adapted. The Pentagon is concerned. So is the State Department. They're worried you've been compromised. Jake felt anger flare but kept his voice level. With respect, Ambassador, the only thing I've been compromised by is common sense. The Kronar are preparing for a major offensive. If the Zephyrian Empire falls, Earth is next. We need this coalition, and Princess Lyra is the person who could build it. Everything I'm doing serves Earth's interests. And your personal interests? Let's be honest about what's happening here. What's happening here is that 2 people found a connection that transcends politics and species. Is that complicated? Yes. Is it a problem? Only if we make it one. Lyra is one of the most capable military commanders I've ever seen. She understands tactics, logistics, and how to lead diverse forces. Working with her strengthens Earth's position. Martinez was quiet for a moment. Earth's government wants you to maintain your position but report regularly. They're sending additional military advisors to support the coalition effort. And Captain, they want it made clear that your first loyalty remains to humanity. My first loyalty is to stopping the Kronar before they kill billions of sentients across multiple species. That includes protecting humanity. It also includes protecting the Zephyrians, the Galvans, and everyone else who's going to die if we fail. Spoken like someone who's fallen for a princess. Spoken like someone who understands what's at stake. Is there anything else, Ambassador? Just this. Be careful, Captain. You're playing a dangerous game. If this coalition fails, Earth will need a scapegoat. Don't let it be you. The transmission ended, leaving Jake alone with his thoughts. He understood the concerns. From Earth's perspective, he was a junior officer getting in over his head. But they hadn't seen what he'd seen. They hadn't felt the connection between him and Lyra, the way they moved together in combat, the way she challenged and supported him in equal measure. This wasn't just personal. It was fundamental to everything they were trying to build. He made his way back through the palace, thinking about everything that had happened since he'd walked into the Grand Hall. Less than a week ago, he'd been a soldier following orders. Now he was at the center of a political storm that would reshape the galaxy. The smart play would be to step back, maintain distance, focus on the mission. But since when had he ever done the smart thing? He found Lyra in the training center, working through combat forms with an intensity that spoke of stress being worked out through physical action. She moved like water, each strike flowing into the next, her blade singing through the air. He watched from the doorway until she noticed him and lowered her weapon. Couldn't sleep either? She asked, breathing hard. Just finished a call with Earth. They're concerned. About us? About everything. The coalition, the politics, the fact that we're apparently the galaxy's favorite new drama. He entered the training space, picking up a practice blade. Want a sparring partner? You know I'll beat you. Probably. But I'll make you work for it. They circled each other, and then Lyra struck. Jake blocked, barely, and they fell into a rhythm of attack and defense. She was faster and stronger, but he was unpredictable, using techniques from Earth's various martial traditions that she'd never encountered. They fought in silence, communicating through movement, each testing the other's limits. Finally, Lyra disarmed him and pressed her blade to his throat. They were both breathing hard, faces inches apart. Yield? She asked. To you? Always? She lowered the blade and kissed him, fierce and intense. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. This is insane. We've known each other less than a week. Best week of my life. Mine too, and that terrifies me. Because I can't afford to be distracted right now. I have a war to prepare for, a coalition to build, and thousands of lives depending on my decisions. But when I'm with you, all I can think about is this. Jake pulled her close. We don't let the galaxy dictate our choices. We fight the war, build the coalition, save the innocent, and somehow find time for each other. It won't be easy, but nothing worthwhile ever is. You're impossible. You like impossible. It's why you picked me. Lyra laughed, and the sound echoed through the training center. Come on. We have a fleet review in 6 hours, and I need at least some sleep. They walked back together, comfortable in the silence, both knowing that the coming days would test them in ways they couldn't predict. But for now, In this moment, they had each other. And sometimes, that was enough. The Coalition fleet began assembling at Thresna system within the week. Jake stood on the bridge of the Stellar Command, Princess Lyra's flagship, watching ships from a dozen species take their positions. Earth's contribution was modest but significant, 4 heavy cruisers and a dozen destroyers, all crewed by veterans of the Outer Colonies campaigns. The Galvan Consortium provided support ships and their legendary logistics capabilities. The Free Colonies sent raiders, fast attack craft perfect for harassment operations. "It's beautiful," Lyra said beside him, watching the holographic display. Humans, Zephyrians, Galvans, colonists, all working together. 6 months ago, this would have been impossible. 6 days ago, it would have been impossible, Jake corrected. "You made this happen." She touched his hand briefly, a small gesture that nonetheless drew glances from the bridge crew. Their relationship was no longer secret, and reactions were mixed. Some saw it as a symbol of interspecies cooperation, others viewed it as a dangerous distraction. The Kronar fleet is moving faster than expected. Intelligence estimates they'll reach Thresna within 48 hours. "Then we'd better be ready." Jake studied the tactical display, noting defensive positions and potential weak points. "Have you considered using the asteroid field as a force multiplier?" "How so?" He expanded the view, highlighting a dense asteroid cluster near the system's edge. "The Kronar favor direct assault tactics. They'll come in hard and fast, trying to overwhelm our defensive positions. But if we position raider groups in the asteroids with mass drivers, we can channel their approach, force them into kill zones where our heavy ships can maximize firepower." Admiral Kor, listening from his command station, nodded approvingly. "The human has a point. It's unconventional, but that might work in our favor. The Kronar expect us to fight defensively. This gives us an offensive element." "Do it," Lyra ordered. "Get the Free Colony raiders deployed immediately. And Admiral, I want continuous patrol patterns established. No surprises." The next 2 days were a blur of preparation. Jake barely slept, splitting his time between tactical planning sessions and inspecting defensive positions. Earth's cruisers took point at the primary jump coordinates, their heavy armor perfect for absorbing the initial assault. Zephyrian ships formed a mobile reserve, ready to respond to breakthroughs. The Galvans established supply depots throughout the system, ensuring ammunition and repairs would be available wherever needed. On the second night, with the Kronar fleet hours away, Jake found Lyra alone on the observation deck. She stood before the massive window, watching the stars, her expression troubled. "Having doubts?" he asked quietly. "Always. Every commander who doesn't doubt themselves is a fool." She didn't turn to face him. "But this is different. I'm responsible for warriors from multiple species, using strategies we've barely tested, betting everything on a defense that might not hold. If I'm wrong, thousands die. If you're right, millions live. That's the trade we make." Jake moved beside her, their shoulders touching. "You're not alone in this. Every commander in this fleet believes in you. Your people, my people, everyone who came here did it because they trust your judgment. I hope their trust isn't misplaced. It's not. I've seen you in action, remember? You're brilliant, decisive, and you care about your people in a way that makes them fight harder. The Kronar are about to learn what happens when they face a united galaxy led by someone who refuses to lose." Lyra finally looked at him, her eyes swirling with colors that indicated deep emotion. "If we survive this, I want to see Earth. Walk on your world, understand where you come from. Is that strange? No stranger than me wanting to see the Crystal Mountains on your homeworld. We'll do both. After the battle. Promises of after the battle are supposed to be bad luck. Good thing I don't believe in luck. I believe in preparation, skill, and having the right people around you. We've got all three." An alarm interrupted them, followed by Admiral Kor's voice over the comm system. "All hands to battle stations." Kronar fleet detected emerging from jump space. Multiple contacts, count still rising. "They're here." The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as Jake and Lyra arrived. The holographic display showed the Kronar fleet in terrifying detail. 40 capital ships, hundreds of smaller vessels, all moving with predatory purpose toward the Coalition forces. "Holy hell," breathed Captain Williams from the Earth cruiser Defiant. "They brought everything." "Size isn't everything," Lyra said calmly, though Jake could see the tension in her shoulders. "All ships maintain defensive positions. Let them come to us. Raiders, are you in position?" "Affirmative, Command," came the reply from the Free Colony ships hidden in the asteroids. "Ready on your mark?" The Kronar fleet advanced, and Jake noticed something. They're too confident. Look at their formation. They're not even screening their capital ships properly. You're right, Admiral Kor said. They think we'll break and run. They've underestimated us. Let's punish that mistake. Lyra's voice carried across all channels. All forces, weapons free on my command. Show them what a united galaxy can do. The Kronar reached their optimal engagement range and fired. Space lit up with energy beams and missile trails. The Earth cruisers absorbed the initial barrage, their armor holding but taking damage. Then Lyra gave the order, Raiders now! The Free Colony ships emerged from the asteroids, mass drivers hurling rocks at relativistic speeds into the Kronar flanks. The enemy formation disrupted, ships colliding as they tried to evade. In that moment of confusion, the Zephyrian mobile forces struck, appearing from behind the planet with devastating precision. The battle became chaos, ships wheeling and firing, explosions blossoming like deadly flowers against the black. Jake coordinated the Earth forces, calling targets and managing the firing solutions, while Lyra commanded the overall battle, moving pieces on a three-dimensional chessboard at speeds that boggled the mind. An hour in, a Kronar heavy cruiser broke through the line, heading straight for the Stellar Command. Brace for impact, someone shouted. But Jake was already moving, triggering the flagship's defensive batteries manually when the automated systems lagged. Energy beams cut across space, catching the Kronar ship mid-approach. It staggered, armor failing, and then Earth's cruiser Defiant rammed it at full speed, both ships vanishing in a ball of fire. Captain Williams, respond, Lyra called, but only static answered. Jake felt the loss like a physical blow. Williams had been a friend, a mentor, someone who taught him half of what he knew about fleet tactics. Stay focused, Lyra said quietly, her hand briefly touching his shoulder. Honor him by winning. The battle raged for 6 more hours. The Coalition forces gave ground grudgingly, making the Kronar pay for every meter. The asteroid field became a graveyard of ships. The defenders' coordination, their willingness to support each other regardless of species, proved decisive. When Zephyrian ships took damage, Earth cruisers covered their retreat. When human vessels ran low on ammunition, Galvan support ships rushed to resupply under fire. Finally, battered and bloodied, the Kronar fleet retreated. They'd lost over half their ships and failed to break the Coalition defense. Victory, but one that tasted of ashes when they counted their own losses. Jake stood on the bridge as damage reports flooded in. They'd lost 9 ships, including the Defiant, and dozens more were heavily damaged. But they'd held. Against overwhelming odds, they'd stood together and won. Lyra addressed the fleet, her voice carrying exhaustion, but also pride. Warriors of the Coalition, today you proved that unity is strength. You fought not just for your own people, but for all peoples. The Kronar came to Thresna expecting an easy victory. Instead, they found something they didn't understand. A galaxy that refuses to be conquered. Well done, all of you. Later, in the privacy of her quarters, Lyra collapsed into Jake's arms. She was shaking, the adrenaline finally wearing off. We won, she whispered. You won. Your plan, your leadership. Our victory. She looked up at him. I couldn't have done this without you. Your tactical insights, your support, just knowing you were there. I'll always be there for whatever comes next. The war isn't over. The Kronar will regroup, and next time they'll be prepared for our tactics. Then we'll adapt. Together. Jake held her close, feeling her twin hearts beating against his chest. The galaxy is changing, Lyra. Today proved that. Species that have been rivals for centuries work together because you showed them how. That's bigger than one battle. My father is calling for a formal alliance. A permanent coalition with shared military command and mutual defense agreements. It would fundamentally restructure galactic politics. And you'd be at the center of it. We'd be at the center of it. Like it or not, we've become symbols. The human and the Zephyrian who've found something the galaxy desperately needs. Hope. Jake kissed her forehead. Then I guess we'd better live up to it. They stood together watching the stars, knowing that this was just the beginning. The Kronar would return. Political opposition would grow. There would be those who saw their relationship as weakness rather than strength. But they'd face it all together, building something new from the ashes of the old. 2 warriors from different worlds, united by something stronger than duty or politics, united by choice, by understanding, and by a love that had somehow bloomed in the middle of a war. The galaxy would never be the same, and maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what it needed.